It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free.
Wrong one. Now you're up.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980 on what is a somber day for us here at Odyssey in DC. As you were just listening to Chris Russell, remember his friend, former co-host, Pete Medhurst. And rather than circle back to talking about Pete later in the show, and I might do that as well, I wanted to just simply, like, as opposed to, again, the hard left turn, we're going to have to hard left turn eventually to go from incredible personal low and just a human tragedy. And that's what cancer is so often. And losing one of our colleagues, losing someone who meant a lot to the station and to the stations over at 106.7 The Fan is someone, and Chris is like this too, where we've been between the two stations. Like, we both worked with Pete in both spots. And then we have the most joyous thing that's happened in DC sports in forever. That is our main topic. And so trying to square that's my job. I'll figure out how to do it. But at the end of the day, as I was listening to Chris there at the end of the show, I just texted Anthony and I was like, you know what? Rather than talk about Pete later, I'm just going to open the show and talk about Pete a little bit now. And Pete was and by the way, if you're just tuning in, if you're like, what are you talking about? Unfortunately, our friend, our colleague, Pete Medhurst, passed away last night. Pete was just 55 years old. Pete was someone who worked with Chris Russell as a host, but also was doing updates, and he was a fill-in play-by-play man for us here at the Odyssey cluster, specifically with the Nationals, where he was the third broadcaster whenever Charlie or Dave had to be out. Pete was also the longtime voice of Navy athletics and meant so much to his community out in Annapolis, and his family still does. When you're the voice of something, it's a different relationship when you're the voice of not just even a professional team. Like, you know, the job that Bram has is phenomenal, and Bram is getting to author all of these moments as the play-by-play voice of the Commanders. And that's something that he gets to carry and is incredible for Bram. But when you're the play-by-play voice of a college, and especially when that college is the Naval Academy, like, how special is that relationship with those young men, those young women, their families, the things you get to do as the lead broadcaster for an entity so special. And the thing that always stood out to me with Pete was there was nobody that sounded more like a professional broadcaster in our space, in this city, than Pete Medhurst. Like a broadcaster's broadcaster, to the point of almost parody sometimes. I'm like, there's no way this is your real voice, man. Like, you can't talk like this all the time, but he could, because that's who he was. It was authentic. It wasn't a bit. It wasn't accentuated. It wasn't, any of those things. It was just legitimate, and it was real of just how talented he was and his ability to deliver clear, concise information. Although I would say sometimes concise wasn't his forte because he just knew so much. And my number one, like, go-to story with Pete would always be the draft that I worked with him. I want to say it was the 2020 NFL draft. I can't remember exactly. The details are blurry. It was one of those drafts deep in COVID, and there was, I guess, two of those. The 2020 draft was obviously the deepest, and then it probably wasn't that one, but 2021 was still pretty deep coming out of it, and I guess they had the draft in person that year, but things were finally getting back to normal, and I guess it would have been the 21 draft, and I just remember thinking, like, I'm underprepared for this broadcast, which is something I hate. I hate it, but I had so much stuff going on that I was doing with a variety of projects and things that and also, like, I'm just not a huge college football guy. And so for me to prepare for the draft was such a gargantuan task. And I did my best, but because of the scope of what you need to know for a draft, all the different players, and it's one thing when it's last year, right? The 2024 draft was easy for someone hosting the Washington Draft Show. Do you know everything you can possibly know about Jaden Daniels? Do you know everything you can possibly know about Drake May just in case? But we knew J.J. McCarthy. Like, we knew it was going to be one of those quarterbacks. You weren't going to have to wait very long. You weren't going to have to talk about any other teams. It was going to be, Caleb, get out of the way, go to Chicago. Let's see what Washington does. We're pretty sure by draft day that it's going to be Jaden Daniels. And then let's talk about Jaden Daniels. That year, Commanders are much more towards the middle of the draft. They're, with Rivera, and you never knew quite where he was going to go, which is not meant to turn this into a bashing of Ron Rivera, but you just didn't know. But I remember literally thinking to myself, verbatim, and I probably said this verbatim to some people, I'll be fine. I've got Pete. I think CK and I actually had that conversation. Like, I'll be fine. I got Pete. Because he was a literal human encyclopedia. There's just no one who knew more stuff about everything in the sports world than Pete Medhurst. And whether it was an NFL draft, an NBA draft, like if you had to have a reaction to breaking news, which is also why, on top of him being a good writer and excellent on the delivery and professional in terms of his timing and all that kinds of things, all these little things that I appreciate as a broadcaster, like if you want someone in the anchor booth, Pete Medhurst was your guy, because if there was breaking news, you could tell Pete something happened 5 seconds before he went on the air, and it would have been like he wrote, he could have done 3 minutes. And then you'd be like, hey, Pete, it's an update, man. Like, we'll take care of it in the segment. You could have, because he had that much. He could have done an hour, because no matter what you told him on the sports front, that guy knew what he had to know. And so all I had to do on that draft was drive the bus. I had to make sure we didn't crash, get us in and out of break, which I thought was funny because I was like, wait, I'm leading this? Pete's Pete. Broadcaster's broadcaster. But all I had to do was drive the bus. And sure enough, as the players come off the board, hey, Pete, what do you think of this pick for the Jets? What do you think of this pick for this team? How is this shaping the board for the Commanders? Oh, is that a big deal? Dude, it was on it. Every single pick, from the time that we signed on, setting up the day, to the time that we signed off that night, couldn't have asked for a better partner on that particular night, on that particular show. And that was my most extensive experience working with Pete. But of course, saw him in the halls and all those types of things over the 8 years that we would have crossed in our building at Odyssey. And I know that, especially Chris and CK and Grant and Danny and the folks that worked a lot more, the junks that worked a lot closer with Pete far more often. This is such a brutal day. I mean, for me, someone who had so much respect for him and get the updates, but Pete and I weren't like we were close friends or anything, but getting the updates, just like, damn, man, come on, Pete. I know how tough you are. Like, you got this, pull through. And obviously we got the terrible news this morning that we've lost our friend and colleague, Pete Medhurst, at the age of 55. If you'd like to support his wife, Brenda, and his kids and their family, unfortunately, death is horrible, as it is, just the fact that you've lost someone. But the reality is it's also extraordinarily expensive. And that's just a sad reality of the world that we live in. And I don't even know why. I'm not going to beg to or start to pontificate on why that is. But all that stuff is really genuinely expensive. And if you'd like to support Brenda and the Medhurst family in this incredibly difficult time monetarily, we would love to be the connection to let you do so. They've set up a GoFundMe page. If you're watching us on YouTube, I've pinned that to the chat on our YouTube page. I've also put it in the description. If you're listening on the radio right now, you can head to x.com/theteam980, and that has been pinned to the top there. And I will also try to pin this on my Instagram page at Hoffman.sports. There is no easy transition. There is no easy way to have this in the background for the rest of the show. And on a day that we on our show do a vibe check Tuesday, like, what's the vibe? It sucks. It sucks. It sucks. It sucks. It sucks. But we're gonna, look, nothing Pete Medhurst loved doing more than talking sports. We're gonna talk sports. Again, Pete and I weren't super duper close, and I'm not gonna pretend that we were, but I'm pretty sure that I didn't know Pete well enough that he would be like, y'all go have fun. Y'all enjoy this. Y'all take this monumental, historic moment in DC sports, one that luckily Pete got to live with the Nationals and the Capitals, and the teams that did win while he was doing this job. But he certainly wouldn't want to take away the joy of DC sports fans. He would never want to be the reason that DC sports fans are sad. So we're going to honor Pete by having some fun, talking some football on the radio, and doing our best to honor our guy that way. So with that, we'll get back to the Commanders, and we'll get back to their matchup with the Eagles. Mitch will join us at 5. We'll do all our usual Tuesday stuff. We got a pick 6 at 6 today. Our typical Monday version gets bumped to Tuesday, so that's going to be a good time. And that's how we're going to roll for the rest of the show. But again, if you'd like to donate, the link is multiple places, including pinned in the YouTube chat at the Team 980. We'll be right back on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. 5 o'clock, Mitch Tischler joins us. You will hear from Logan Paulson on Jaden Daniels' performance coming up at 5:30. Our pick six at 6 today. I'm pretty pumped about it. We're going to review the players that I picked. Anthony, I did it without you on Friday. I think I did a pretty good job, too, of identifying some of the key players in the Commanders' win over the Lions. We're going to review that coming up at 6, and then we'll see what we got. Probably go around the NFL at 6:30. But right now, we're opening up the phone lines. Take your calls at 301-230-0980 as we get your vibe, a vibe check Tuesday on the Commanders heading to that NFC Championship game. And I was flipping through the Anthony, I was flipping through the what's it called? The weekly release, which I realized I just searched for a term. Nobody outside of the media knows what it is. Basically, the Commanders send around, and every team does this, they send around like a book that has all the stats and records, and it's got rosters and all this kind of stuff every single week. It's got the broadcasters for the game. It's got everything. And yes, the game is on Fox. You'll get not Tom Rinaldi. You will get Tom Rinaldi, but you'll get Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady, Aaron Andrews, Tom Rinaldi on the call. Again, we have the game on the Team 980 here as well, courtesy of Westwood One, where Ian Eagle and Kurt Warner and Ross Tucker will be on the call. Ian will join us at 4:30 on Friday. But I was flipping through there, and they had the playoff records by round. Did you know that Washington is 5-1 in conference championship games?
I did not know that.
Doesn't do you any good on Sunday, but it's a cool stat, and that's some cool history. Doesn't mean you're any more likely to win. Did they lose to Dallas on one of the Cowboys? Like the Washington and Dallas went like ham after each other in the late 80s, early 90s. Dallas obviously ultimately got the 3. Washington got their final of their 3 Lombardis. So my guess is they lost one of those. But any fan that was alive then, if I'm wrong, is going to absolutely murder me for suggesting that they might have lost to the Dallas Cowboys. So either I'm correct or I'm dead. I'm dead to the people who favor team history over any other analytical point, any other ability that I might have.
Yeah, and I'm not doing you any justice or service.
You were Googling frantically. Now, oh my God, Anthony. Okay, now you're gonna make me do this. Washington Commanders franchise history. Nope, not the Wikipedia page. We need the Pro Football Reference page. This is the most thrilling radio that we can possibly do. This is why we need Pete. Pete would know this. Pete would know this and everything else off the top of his head. Lost Super Bowl, lost division, or won Super Bowl, lost division, lost conference. In 1986, they lost the conference championship game. Nope, they got shut out by the New York Giants on January 11th, 1987.
And you had the audacity.
I know.
To say the Cowboys.
I know. Yeah, and then the Giants went and beat Denver in the Super Bowl, who beat Cleveland in OT. That was one of the terrible Cleveland losses. Yeah, that was it was a bad day for Jay Schrader in the old Washington. He went 20 of 50 for 195, sacked 4 times. How about this? The Giants won a game, 1987 NFL football, everybody, where Phil Simms went 7 of 14 for 90 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions. Yikes. Ran the ball damn near 40 times. Wow. Different world, different league, different everything. Art Monk did have 8 for 126 in that game, Anthony. 8 for 126, which is more yards through the air than Phil Simms had passing for the Giants, but they lost 17-0.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Different league now. Different league. All right, it's a Vibe Check Tuesday. Let's get to the phones at 301 230-0980. Let's get started with Samson in Frederick. Samson, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoffman, man. Good talking to you. Hey, my vibe check is talk me off the ledge, man, regarding our kicker Gonzo, man. I'm just not feeling super confident in his abilities going into such a critical game.
I mean, I don't know that I can talk you off the ledge. It feels pretty high stakes. If I'm being honest, Samson. He's fine, which I know is not exactly a ringing endorsement. I do think that like some of the nervousness that people got after seeing him go through his OCD ticks before that game winner where he doinked it in. Like, one, he made it. That's pretty important. And now we know that that's like a thing. That wasn't just like nerves. That was his OCD, which he talked about extensively last week, and good on him for doing so. But that doesn't mean he's not ready. He's not prepared, not anything. He's an average NFL kicker, which means he's going to miss some. Maybe the best thing I can say is if he had a miss in him, he got it out of his system and in a kick that ultimately didn't matter when they could have gone up 17 instead of 14. He also has been excellent on kickoffs outside of the first one last week. And I think that's actually a really important thing. The field position game for Washington, even though they didn't punt it except for the one time where Tress pinned the Lions inside the 10. From a field position standpoint, they cover kicks extraordinarily well. And part of that is Zane Gonzalez's ability to directionally kick and make it a difficult return and get those guys on the edge down closer to the ball. And the only time that Detroit had starting field position above the 30-yard line was that first kickoff that he sent out of bounds. It was either touchback or tackled inside the 30 every single time. So, yeah, field goal kicking, especially if it's cold and or windy and or snowing, don't feel amazing. I don't feel great about Jake Elliott on the Philly side either with the season he's had, and he stunk it up last week as well. But at least on the kickoff front, you got something as opposed to, say, when Austin Seibert was here and anything that was over 40 yards was a risk, and he couldn't kick the ball through the end zone when you needed him to, like Zane Gonzalez can. So that's my kicker take. All right. Thanks for the call, Samson. I hope Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, he was listening. He just hung up.
Okay. I guess he's satisfied.
I think so.
I mean, never mind. That's good. Glad we started with kicker takes. Here's what we're going to do.
You gave him the reassurance he needed, Craig. That's all.
Okay, as long as you're reassuring me. When we get back, we got phone lines starting to fill up, and we're going to get to more calls that are probably not about the kicker. Also, we have Kurt who wants to comment on the 1986-87 NFC Championship game, a thing that just became a part of our show that we didn't know would be part of our show when we started the show today. That's next. More of your calls here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Taking your calls, 301-230-0980. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday. Let's keep it rolling with Kurt the Sigma, who not only has thoughts on the game against the Eagles, but if you were with us in the last segment, we were trying to figure out what the one loss in Washington's ever 5-1 record in conference championship games was, and it was the 1986-87 season where they lost to the Giants in the NFC Championship game. And Kurt, I've been told you have thoughts on that as well.
I do. I'll start with that. How y'all doing today?
Doing all right, man. Hanging in there.
Okay. It was a game where neither team had 200 yards of total offense, and it was a swirling 38-mile-an-hour wind the whole game. And Parcells made a strategic move where he outsmarted Joe Gibbs. Okay, he took the ball. He made the Skins go into the wind right from the start. Okay, so once they went into the wind, Gibbs tried to put Raleigh McKenzie, who was a guard, in the backfield as a lead blocker for George Rogers. But Rogers couldn't get anything. I mean, nothing. Okay, and they stuffed them like on a 3-and-out where they didn't get nothing. They got the ball. They had the win. They scored. Once it was 7-0, the game was essentially over. Okay, they scored another touchdown before the first half, and they had them shut out. And then the Skins just could not get anything going. When they went against the win, they couldn't get anything going. When they did have the win, the Giants just did a lot of blitzing. They just batted shredded the whole game.
Well, yeah, I mean, 38-mile-an-hour wins, and they threw it 50 times. You know, Joe's a Hall of Famer.
Right. And
not going to doubt Joe Gibbs, but that seems like that might have been a tactical error.
Right. Yeah, it was a tactical error, no doubt. But there was one time where Gary Clark got free. I mean, he was wide open, but the wind swirled and he dropped it, but you can't blame him for dropping it. I mean, the ball was just moving all. It was like zigzagging in the air, and he just couldn't pull it in. He was wide open. Everybody was like 10 yards behind him. And they couldn't pull it in. And after that was their last chance.
Well, the good news is this weekend, here in present times in Philadelphia this weekend, the forecast is not too bad. There are going to be some winds, but like 10, 11-mile-an-hour winds, nothing too crazy.
Right.
So hopefully Jaden and company have I won't say comfortable day. I mean, it'd be great if they had a comfortable day, but certainly not going to be weather-induced discomfort. How are you feeling about this edition of the NFC Championship game?
I feel good about it. I mean, everything points to Philly winning. I mean, they got the offensive line, defensive line. They got the advantage of the secondary. They got the advantage of skill positions. They got the advantage of running back. But for some reason, I think the Commanders are going to pull it out. Jeff Joyner gave them bulletin board material today. He done came out his face and said that the Commanders have a snowball's chance in hell to win. And then he gave Jaden Daniels zero respect. He said he can't respect anybody that hasn't played in the league more than 1 year. So he said Jaden Daniels, as far as he's concerned, is a zero. Okay, to me, that's bulletin board material. I think they should get a hold of that, look at that, motivate that. Not that they need motivation, but it was very disrespectful in my opinion. But for whatever reason, I just think they're going to win the game. Okay, everything says they shouldn't, but I just think they will.
Kurt, thanks for the call. And I would say two things. One, everything except for the fact that they have the better quarterback, which is a relevant plot point in an NFL playoff game. The Washington Commanders have the better quarterback in this game. And all due respect to Jalen Hurts, I don't think it's particularly close. If you were to stick Jaden Daniels in the middle of the Eagles offense, oh my God, what he could do with that skill position group and that O-line, holy cow. This dude is now over 5,000 total yards from the season with De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus and Jamison Crowder and 34-year-old Zach Ertz and Brian Robinson, who all due respect is not Saquon Barkley, like obviously. But the other thing that I would say that the Commanders have that is an advantage is I like their staff better. Like I think from a game plan standpoint, I think they've got the better group. Now, Vic Fangio is awesome. And if you told me that Vic Fangio got Cliff Kingsbury's number on Sunday, I'd be like, dang. It was fun while it lasted. Because Cliff has been awesome so far in these playoffs. And I really, really trust Cliff. But Vic Fangio's sensational. He's one of the godfathers of modern NFL defense. And on the other side, like Kellen Moore is very good. He's not as good. He's not one of the elite play callers and designers in the league. But with this skill position talent, I also don't know that you need to be. And so that seems relevant. On the motivation point, this isn't a bulletin board material team. This is an intrinsically, internally motivated team. They have to go through us, was the message last week. Like, they're not looking for some pundit somewhere to say something silly. They're not like, oh, yeah, that's it. Let's get that extra little bit of whatever. No. They're going to be like, we're going to approach it the same way we have every single week. We're going to do our business. We're going to be prepared. We're going to get that work. And then on Sunday, they can get our work. And that's how they operate. And it creates a consistency that I think has been sensational. And it's allowed them to get to this point. 301-230-0980. Let's go to our guy, Ross in Tampa. Ross, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show, my friend.
What's going on, Craig Money? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right, Ross. Doing all right.
Hey, I tell you what, not vetoed. I got away from 980 for a while. You know, some of my heaviest hitters, Zabe, Galdi, Scott Lynn, even Kevin for a little bit, were all cut from the radio station, and I kind of got away. So I wasn't able to, listen to guys like Pete Medhurst. And I actually didn't start listening to you or Russ until things around here got better. I never listened to you guys talk about congressional investigations and flights and 60 million. I didn't listen to any of that. I listened to you guys when things got better. So it's a shame that I wasn't around during the Pete Medhurst days, but my condolences goes to the entire 980-1067 family, man.
Appreciate that, Ross. Thank you.
No problem, man. So football-wise, you know what? I did not know Vic Fangio's been coaching so long. My very first NFL game was a Colts game, and I didn't know he was the defensive coordinator there before Dungy got there. That's insane. But I'll tell you what, man, my vibe is off the charts. Craig, I don't know how much older you are than me. I think you might got me by like a whole calendar year. Dude, last time this team won a Super Bowl, like I was not even a year old, man. And I want this so bad. I want this for guys like Anthony, Linnell, Denson, guys who weren't even alive when they last won. Someone for me and you who couldn't even tell you where we were when they last won a Super Bowl. Now, I know. Hold on. Let's go ahead and take it one step at a time. Let's get through Philly and then whoever's there, you know what I'm saying? But I want to take the nastiest route. I didn't want to be like, I want to play LA because it's warmer. No, I want to go through Philly, and then God willing, if Kansas City can pull through and meet us there, I want the toughest road, because Linnell said it best. If you got this guy on the team, the quarterback that is, you got a chance. And it's crazy to think, Craig, this is probably going to be the worst crew around him. And there's so many talented players. It's insane, man. But my vibe check is the highest it's been with this organization for my entirety of being a fan for this organization, man. And I couldn't be more excited. But you guys hang in there. You guys have a good rest of your day. And I'll be talking to you later this week, man. Let's go.
I appreciate it, Ross. Thank you. Yeah, man. Like, first of all, we're not going to give Linnell credit for if we got 5, we got a chance. That's all of his teammates say that. Everybody says that. That's not a Linnell saying. We're not giving Linnell that kind of credit. Linnell says plenty of stuff that nobody else says. He can have that stuff. But yeah, man, I want this to happen for a lot of different reasons. And I want this to happen for a lot of different people, for fans, young and old, for the reasons that Ross said, if you haven't seen it, but also for those that have stuck through, or those that decided, you want to know what, this is different, I'm coming back. Like, I want that. I also want it as a sports fan. It's like a generic, forget that I'm from here and I live here and this is where I'm at now, and the team that I want to see succeed the most is the burgundy and gold. No twisting that. But like as a generic sports fan, as someone who likes seeing people who do it right be rewarded on and off the field, I want this for this organization. I want it for Jaden, who goes about his business the right way, who doesn't cheat the game. I want this for Adam Peters, who has built it the right way. For Dan Quinn, who treats people well and ensures that that Ashburn's a great place to work for everybody. For guys like Bobby Wagner, for guys like Terry McLaurin, who've stuck it out and have just continued to work hard and been a professional the entire time through all of the crap. I want it for all of them. And to beat Philly, who at times has been, I would say, not the most professional. Some of the nonsense that Sirianni's done. And, the way CJ Gardner-Johnson plays is not my favorite. And, they've got some great dudes over there too. Like I love Mailata. Like his story is incredible. I think it'd be awesome for Saquon. Like if I'm being objective about it, of course, there's going to be guys on every team that you're like, oh, I want it. That'd be great for that guy. And look, like Mahomes, dude's the best I've ever seen. It seems like it's righteous for him to win every year. It seems like Josh Allen, that dude deserves a Super Bowl. How incomplete would it feel to witness how great he is and to be like, he never won one? But yeah, man, there's no doubt who I want to win the most. And there's no doubt that they have a chance because they've got a guy who's elevated to that Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar level, right on the verge of it, or perhaps even on it as a rookie in the NFL, which is wholly unprecedented, and we'll see just how far he can take it. One more segment's worth of your calls next at 301-230-0980, and then Mitch Tischler joins us at 5 o'clock. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Taking your calls, 301-230-0980. That's our phone number where you can hit us on the Team 980 listener line on a Vibe Check Tuesday. How we feeling as the Commanders are entering the NFC Championship game? Let's keep things rolling with Ken. Ken, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Craig, how's it going?
Doing all right, Ken. Thanks for asking.
Hey, I'm like Linnell. As long as we have number 5, we're never out of the game.
You,
Hey,
Linnell,
Craig,
and a heck of a lot of other people, Ken.
It's been a long time coming. For the first time in 38 years, I'm not on suicide watch. And let me tell you, it is awful nice to look on the other side of the fence. Unlike other people, I see the Commanders winning 31-21. I don't respect the passing game at all. I think we're going to keep Barkley in check and maybe give him 120, 125 on the ground. But, you know, and I reserve this for another show. What makes me sleep well at night is the way this organization is ran and how much money we have to continue to invest in this ball club. It's what a feeling. I understand like teams like Yankees and Cardinals and Celtics of the past and Lakers of the past, that feeling of knowing every year you have an opportunity. And those are the things that I think we're about to experience now. I'll end with that. I'm out. You guys do a great job, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Kyle Brandt said something on Good Morning Football this morning that I thought was interesting, that I just got spurred into my mind by Ken's call, which is he was basically like, the Commanders are probably giving a lot of teams false hope. Like, if your team stinks and you're like, well, we can be the next Washington. No, you can't. And the reason is simple. You're not going to change owners. Like, if you're the Jets, you're still owned by Woody Johnson. If you're the Jags, you're still owned by Shad Khan. Your ownership, and Kyle didn't use names because he's being nicer than I'm being, and also he probably would be frowned upon of doing that on NFL Network. But I appreciated the honesty of his take, given the circumstances. But he was like, "You're not going to change ownership," and Jaden Daniels is an anomaly. They have the best rookie quarterback ever, and they changed ownership basically all in 2 years, technically, but really kind of 1 year, because last year I'm counting as year 0. It doesn't even count on the Harris ownership clock, because that was a Snyder-built team, and then they dismantled it and started over, and this is your first Harris-built team. And that's probably correct. The only way to really genuinely change the direction of your organization is to change ownership. Or if you're an owner and you want to change the direction of your organization and you don't want to sell, you better change how you're acting. You better change who it is that you're hiring. You better change something structurally that gives someone outside of you decision-making power. And I think the Lions have done that. The Lions, did that when they hired Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. And they're like, all right, we got people now. We're going to let them roll. And they made good hires, and now they're going to let them go. But for Josh, I mean, Tress Way told an outstanding story on Grant and Danny earlier this week, where he's basically like, when Josh Harris took over, he and Mitch Rales took a bunch of the veteran players out to lunch and told him, like, we're going to get you this, and this off the field so that you can focus on doing what you need to do on it. Like, ownership matters. It matters who you hire. It matters what infrastructure you provide. And the Commanders have that, which is going to give them a chance long into the future. And in the near term, they also have 5, and that's pretty good as well. 301-230-0980. Let's go to DC to wrap things up. DC, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Great day, Craig. How you feeling, brother?
Feeling all right, bro. Feeling all right.
Understood. My prayers and condolences are with the Manhurst family, man.
Thank you.
I can't say enough about the man. He was a man's man, and he definitely stayed in tune and in touch and kept us in touch with local sports from high school to college all the way to the pros. I'm definitely vibing high when it comes to our team. I'm looking forward to going to Philly, a division rival. We 1-1 against them. I'm looking for us to come out on top, being 2-1, and going to the Super Bowl, and making Matt Hurst proud. And I could just hear his voice in my head, talking about the team. But I'm definitely looking forward. I'm definitely vibing high, and I love the direction our team has grown, brother.
No doubt about it, man. It's been really cool to watch it come together. And I'll close with this. And DC, thanks for the kind words on Pete as well. I guess I'll close with this on the Commanders side of it. I think one thing that's really been cool about watching this Washington team come together, and I've said this a couple points this week on here and on Take Command, but I think it's a good point to reiterate to close out. The team they are now is not the team that they were when they broke camp. And that's really special because coaches can enhance a team in a lot of different ways. And the main one in season is schematically. Can you find things that work for your guys, for your personnel, for your skill sets, for your whatever else you want to put in that bucket? But their ability to make the players actually get better at football at the NFL level is pretty remarkable within a season. I mean, we see guys get better over the course of their careers, of course. Everybody learns from experience if they get enough opportunity. Right, there's some guys that never really get that much better because they get very limited opportunities, and then they're out of the league, and we don't ever think about it. And then you have like your stars that just get better and better year over year because they're playing 1,000 snaps and throwing 1,000 passes or running 1,000 routes, and you learn a thing or two, and you get it just a little bit better. You're more adjusted to the speed. You have a larger like mental file on what defenses or offenses are doing to you, all that stuff. But I can't quite remember a unit in it, certainly that I've covered up close. I'm sure it's happened. I would have to ask around national NFL folks or other beat writers or whatever, but I can't think of one that got this much better during a season where you saw young players or even like young vets, Diami being probably the primest of the examples, just become flat out better players. Like if this was a Madden franchise, like Diami started the season at like a 73 receiver, and all of a sudden, like is this guy an 81? He's good now. When did that happen? And so I think their ability to do all of that at once, to establish, build, and uphold a culture, to improve the actual skill and of the players, to continue to find better and better ways to implement those skills is just extraordinarily commendable. And it is the epitome, the definition of a team coming together to play its best football when it matters most. And here's to hoping there's one more of those games on Sunday and then one more 2 weeks after Sunday, which would be, of course, down in New Orleans. I'm Craig Hoffman. It's the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks again for all of the calls and on the football, and also remembering our friend Pete Medhurst. If you're just tuning in, just joining us and haven't heard the news, we lost Pete last night to brain cancer at the age of 55. If you'd like to make any contributions to his family during an incredibly difficult time, you can at the GoFundMe link. I posted it on Instagram at Hoffman.sports. It is on the Team 980's Twitter page. And then if you're watching on YouTube or want to click over to YouTube, I also pinned the link at the top of the chat, and it is in the live episode description as well. So you can go and support Pete's family, Brenda and his kids, and their kids, I should say, during this incredibly difficult time. When we get back, Mitch Tischler is going to join us talking ball here on The Hoffman Show. Hour number 2 of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 5:30, you'll hear Logan Paulson break down Jaden Daniels' performance against the Detroit Lions. But right now, let's go to the phones and welcome someone who was there.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
If it's Tuesday, it's not my beat. It's Mitch Tischler. Holy potatoes, Mitchell. They're going to the NFC Championship game. Hello, my friend.
Holy potatoes, buddy. Did you ever think that was coming?
No. I mean, at some point on Saturday night, I was like, this score seems pretty favorable. I think they're going to go to the NFC Championship game. I thought they had a chance going in the game for sure, but, when are we asking here that I thought it was possible? Like August? No.
At what point on Sunday did you finally wrap your head around the fact, oh my goodness, this is for real?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I kind of had a wrap around it Saturday night, and I think it's because of Jaden. Like, I know that it's not supposed to happen like this, and it never has before. There's a great stat. Anthony and I were just talking about it during the break, going around that, like, of all the rookie quarterbacks that have started a championship game, every other one has had a top 5 scoring defense. The Commanders are 18th. So, like, this isn't supposed to happen like this. But it's at some point within the last month, and, like, I'll keep saying he's a rookie just to remind people how remarkable it is, but I've also accepted, like, he's a top 10 NFL quarterback, and this season he's a top 5 NFL quarterback. This is who he is. And at some point, I think we adjust our expectations accordingly. And by the way, that doesn't mean that they're going to go out and thrash Philly, because Philly is a top 5 NFL team. But I think I have had an easier time almost wrapping my head around it as it's gotten deeper into this because of who Jaden has become.
Yeah, I mean, watch it. Pregame, I felt like they had a chance to win. On our podcast, I picked a 31-30 Commanders win. So, I mean, I was on board with them going into Detroit and shocking the world. But I don't know that I really, really believed it until Quan got that pick 6. And, it was an incredible play by Quan. I loved the blocking by the defense. Frankie Louvu laying out Jared Goff having to go into the concussion, tent protocol. It wasn't until kind of that play, they're up by 10 in the second quarter, and I'm looking around and, maybe 25 feet to my left is Doug Williams. In the box, kind of a little bit down to my right, is Adam Peters and Lance Newmark and company. And I did like kind of a quick scan across, and it wasn't even like these guys were like, hands on head, surprise, surrender Cobra. They were cheering. They were into it. Like, it didn't seem like it was a surprise to them. And I think the way that Dan Quinn had this group ready to go speaks so highly to the coach that he is and everything that he's instilled in such a short period of time here in Washington.
No doubt. And I guess I'll say this too, Mitch. Like, the point in the game for me that was like, oh, they're winning this, was actually the long drive at the end of the third quarter. So they come out after halftime, and because they have that moment with Quan, but then Detroit comes down and scores, and then they get the pick in the end zone. Washington scores. They get the pick in the end zone for Mikey, and it's like, oh, that's big. If they can come out after halftime and score again, well, now we're in business. And their one punt of the game is on their first drive of the second half. And I'm like, oh, no, is this about to get sideways? And Detroit comes down and scores. They make it, I think it was 31-28. And then Jaden just goes on a bleed the clock, suck your soul, take all your hope away drive to put him back up, I guess, double digits. And at that point, I'm like, both from a time, score, clock standpoint and this dude is not being denied standpoint, that was the moment for me that, like, I was like, oh, they're winning this. Being there, was there like an air that came out of the building after that drive on Saturday night in Detroit?
I would say particularly during that drive is when you started seeing this place get quiet. I kept joking during the game. The press box announcer was getting more dejected as the game went on, and they score that touchdown, and you just hear him go, what was it? Who scored that touchdown to get them there?
I'm trying to remember which one. I think that was
Brian Robinson touchdown, 38-28 Commanders. And it was just like you could feel the dejection in his voice. And what made that drive so great, by the way, I mean, you mentioned it, 15 plays was incredible. They went 70 yards. There was the dirty, unsportsmanlike hit to the helmet that Jaden took. I think they threw for 13 yards and ran for 50. And this is a rush offense that obviously has struggled to no end as of late. And to in a key moment like that, to be able to put it together, both with B-Rob and Eckler kind of getting free up the middle and on the right side a little bit, as well as Jaden doing, kind of what Jaden does. That was really a good kind of, final dagger to the heart of the Lions over there.
For sure. And then, of course, the next drive is when Jameson Williams throws the pick. And that's really kind of when it ends. Washington goes down, scores their 45th point of the game. And at that point, it's out of reach. Mitch Tischler's with us here on The Hoffman Show, of course, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with JP Finley. And Mitchell, I referenced our chat last week a million times leading up to this game because you told this great story about how there was a sign in the Commanders' locker room that said something to the effect of they have to go through us. And knowing that was their mindset going in, I was like, oh, this team's going to be ready. How do you think they approach this week? And obviously, it's going to be some level more of the same, but given that it's Philly, third time playing them this year, what was kind of the initial message from Dan Quinn as he talked to the media yesterday, and how do you think they go about this week?
Yeah, I mean, Dan Quinn's favorite saying all year has been anytime, anywhere, anytime, any place, anyone. And that, that goes triple for this week. I don't think that folks are looking at the Commanders kind of in a national span as such an underdog this week because of what they were able to do last week in Detroit. So I don't think he's going to be able to kind of hammer home they have to go through us thing. I think that it's a familiar opponent, an NFC East opponent, a team that dominates the trenches the way that the Eagles do. I think you're gonna hear, DQ, Joe Witt, Cliff Kingsbury, these guys talk about, manhood and, playing for each other and kind of that kind of different style of coaching point to them, because there's going to be a lot this week that is going to come down to not a scheme, not being in the right place at the right time, but going out and making a play. And, I've been super critical of the defensive line and John Allen specifically this season and last season as well. He came out and showed why he got the big payday in that game against Detroit. And he's a guy who didn't play in either of the first two games against the Eagles this season. And so he's somebody who can be a big-time difference maker when you talk about stopping, the Saquon, Jalen Hurts run duo. And if he's able to dominate and be as disruptive as he was on Sunday against the Lions this week, or so I guess Saturday against the Lions as he could be this week against the Eagles, I think that can be a big difference maker for this team. And I'm not saying it comes down to one guy. I'm just using JA as an example of a guy who can go out and win a one-on-one battle and make a big-time play to turn the tides of the game.
Mitch Tischler, Beltway Football Podcast, with us here on the Hoffman Show. What have you made of Witt's ability to consistently turn the faucet off on teams running the football in the second half? Whether it's Saquon after that initial 7-carry burst in the second Philly game, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Tampa, like they've consistently been better in the second half than the first. And sometimes it's game script, but just the per carry stuff is better as well. How do you think they've been able to do it?
I'll tell you what, I think that second game against Philly at Northwest Stadium showed Joe something, because obviously Jalen Hurts went out and you were able to get a little more aggressive at the run stop because Kenny Pickett was in at quarterback. But you saw them start deploying a lot of these cluster blitzes and a lot of these, overloads on one side or another. And you saw them kind of overloading one side and slanting the other direction, which in a run game concept can create some issues for them. I think he kind of figured out a couple things about stopping some of those, some of those basic runs that were getting them beat to the edges. And I think he's kind of tinkered with it as the season has gone on from that point. And I think we're seeing that, those sorts of things, take hold here in the playoffs. I think it also helps, obviously, again, getting John Allen back, having another big-time athletic body that you can line up in a defensive end type position. And, you know, as much as I love Dante Fowler, Dexter Fowler, Dante Fowler, you know, having a big body on the edge, you can set an edge that way is super important. And I think I've liked that they are deploying a little more of the J.A., Deron Payne, Johnny Newton, you know, those three guys being, you know, on your D-line in more opportune run situations. But ultimately, I think you just have to look big picture. You know, Joe Witt has just done an unbelievable job with his defense. You know, early in the season, we saw guys being in the right position and not necessarily, you know, making plays every time. I think now you're starting to see these guys are going out and making those plays. And I point directly to, you know, the defensive coaching staff having these guys, you know, being in the right place and evolving as the season goes. And so it's been great to watch. And I expect that as we get into this game on Sunday, you're going to see, I don't think you're going to see that Eagles run offense be quite as successful as it was the first two outings.
Yeah, something to watch, too, is how they deploy their linebackers, because that's where the Rams got in a lot of trouble. Is like they try to get a bunch of people at the line of scrimmage, and then if Saquon can get to the second level and there's suddenly no one at the second level, good luck to your third level guys. And so that kind of creating levels of the defense is going to be huge, and getting push up front is a good way to do that as well. On the offensive side of the ball, Mitch, the running game, they found it. They did it. How'd they do it?
Listen, I was very pleased with the run game. I loved watching it. I think that was a much bigger tip of the cap to the Lions defense, particularly defensive line, being particularly bad against the run, especially in that game. But I think getting Austin Eckler back involved in the run game was a big part of that. And I think he's a big piece to this offense that I don't know that I necessarily appreciated until he was out for the last, 4 games with that concussion. I think both being a threat in the pass game, being a very good pass blocker and reader of where he needs to step up and pick up blitzes is important. But I think because teams have to account for him in the passing game, I think that helps them out in the run game as well, because the teams aren't able to be quite as aggressive going after Jaden and going after some of those RPO type looks. And so I think you had a situation where Brian Robinson hit holes like we haven't seen him hit lately. I give a big tip of the cap, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, to Dan Quinn, who said that he had a one-on-one film session with Brian Robinson to, discuss what they were seeing so they could get him back on the right page. I think that, certainly helps when your head coach sits down with your starting running back. But ultimately, I think getting Eckler going as well, both, more involved in this offense was a big part of it. All that being said, losing Sam Cosmi, going against Jalen Carter and this Eagles D-line is going to be a different story than what they saw last week against the Lions.
Yeah, there was a moment that, I don't know if you noticed it from the press box, but they did a good job of showing it on Fox on TV, that after, I think it was the second touchdown, there was a long embrace and discussion between Dan Quinn and Brian Robinson. Yeah. And having that added context of those two met and they had a film session, and, if it was on a Monday, it can be a Tell the Truth Monday, or it was a Tell the Truth whatever day the film session was. I think that's great. And it's the kind of thing that I bet you Dan does more often. And I think, to kind of round this thought out, Mitch, and I love your response to it as someone who's out there every day. Like, DQ doesn't say basically anything negative about his players publicly. He just refuses. He will not criticize his players in the press. He will collectively say, we need to do better. It's not like he lives in fantasy land and thinks everything is great, but he does not like to single out players specifically for criticism in the public eye. And I think for some coaches, they don't do that ever because they're afraid to, or they're afraid they're going to hurt the relationship or whatever. I have no doubt that Dan Quinn behind the scenes has no problem being like, hey, that's not good enough. This isn't what we want, and calling guys out in a way that probably is still professional and kind. He's not like making sport of it. But the way he handles these guys, I think, is part of the reason why so many of them respect him so much. And I think that's a great illumination of that I don't know we've gotten a story like that in that much detail specifically this year until that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see it play out. We've seen it play out on Sundays throughout the season. Whether it was kickers missing kicks, whether it was DBs, missing plays. He wants to throw those guys back out there and show them, hey, you're our guy. We trust you. You're the person that we elected to have you play and be on this team. We back you. And I think you see that play out quite often, but particularly with B-Rob, those goal line, inside the 5 runs, particularly in the playoffs, but even before that, have been pretty unsuccessful. And in that moment, a divisional round game, overwhelming number 1 seed, 15-2, all the, different things, for him to trust him, continually handing him that ball again and again and again is he doesn't have to tap Brian Robinson on top of the head and tell him publicly, I support you, this, that, and the other thing. His actions show you that he supports them and that he wants them to be successful and that he believes that he's the right guy. And I think that goes so far in terms of, building confidence with players that one bad play isn't going to be held against them. They're not, and it helps them play free and, not be tentative and in their own heads, which is certainly something we've seen from burgundy and gold teams in the past. So he just has a really great demeanor with these guys, clearly has an awesome rapport with them. And quite frankly, as important as it is that Jaden Daniels is maybe the best player in football right now, you have a group that believes in each other. They believe in the coaching staff above and below them. And, all that year of good feelings helps the team be successful, particularly in what Dan loves to call those winning time moments.
For sure, and the attention to detail they have in the winning time moments as well. Last thing for Mitch Tischler on the way out here, of course, you can listen to him and JP Finley on the Beltway Football Podcast, available wherever you get your pods. Mitchell, the Eagles this weekend, round 3. Early thoughts, feelings, vibes, strategy points going into this game as you and JP are planning for your preview stuff. Like what's top of mind for you?
I mean, I'm going to give you the basic surface level, which is where I've been for a little bit with Jaden and this team, is that the Eagles are going to have to score to keep up with Jaden. The Eagles defense is certainly better than both the Bucs and Lions. I think that the injuries on the Eagles defense that they're dealing with right now are going to be tough for them to handle, particularly at linebacker and at DB with Quinyon Mitchell, even though they're saying that he's fine. I don't know that I believe it, but that's a different story. If the Commanders are able to put pressure on the Eagles the way that they have both the Bucs and Lions, I have no doubt that Jalen Hurts is going to fold. I want him throwing the ball as often and as much as possible. And you can tell me about Marshawn Lattimore and A.J. Brown last time out, but I haven't heard anyone mention Marshawn Lattimore against the Lions. He had a pretty good day there. I think they only targeted him, once or twice?
It was once. It was on the first series of the game. He forced an incompletion. They never went back at him again.
Right? Have your callers been calling in? Oh, my gosh, A.J. Brown, this, that, and the other thing is going to happen. I'm not saying he's going to go out and shut down the Eagles' DBs, but Marshawn Lattimore is a big, 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 big reason why Mikey Sainristil was able to get 2 picks. He's a big reason why Quan was able to go get that interception. I mean, it was a bad throw, but Jared Goff and, boy genius Ben Johnson decided they didn't want to challenge Marshawn Lattimore. And that makes the rest of the defense better. And we've talked the first 2 weeks about them playing good quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is not a good quarterback. He certainly can run the ball, like a son of a gun, and the tush push and all that stuff is incredible. But he has been very, very, very prone to being inaccurate, make bad decisions. And in the playoff game, all you need is a couple of those to happen to get out on top. And so to me, it's going to be about the offense continuing to be efficient, continuing to put pressure on the opposing team, and ultimately putting so much pressure on them that they end up breaking. And quite frankly, that's how I see this Sunday playing out. And it's unbelievable to be thinking about it and to say it out loud. I think this Commanders team is headed to the Super Bowl in New Orleans in 2 weeks.
From your mouth to the football god's ears, Mitchell. Let's have that discussion next Tuesday, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, Mitch Tischler, everybody, joins us every Tuesday during the season, which hopefully is continuing to go for many more weeks here. You can catch him on the Beltway Football Podcast. Talk to you next Tuesday, sir. All right, it's Mitch Tischler. He's gone. See ya. Holy potatoes. Mitchell disappeared. Mitch, of course, with JP on the Beltway Football Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of podcasts, if you missed any part of this show, you can check it out by searching The Hoffman Show. That is anywhere you get your podcasts. And speaking of podcasts, one more time, how about a podcast trifecta? I do a podcast. It's called Take Command. Logan Paulson's the co-host. He's very smart. He played 10 years in the NFL, one of the smartest analysts out there, certainly, I think, NFL-wide, if not just in the Washington sphere. And I'm lucky enough to share a microphone or share, a screen, a podcast with him. We don't share a microphone. We do it from our individual homes. You get the point. We do a show. The tape review shows every Tuesday. The full episode's available now. But next, we're going to do what we do every Tuesday here on the radio, which is share the Jaden Daniels performance part of it. It's a Take Command Tape Tuesday next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. It's a joyous week in DC sports in so many ways, and coming up in about 60 seconds, we'll let you hear Logan's breakdown along with me on take command of Jaden Daniels' performance against the Lions that sent the Commanders to the NFC Championship game. But as we've been mentioning throughout the day and throughout the show, a very sad day here in our Odyssey family as we lost our colleague Pete Medhurst last night after an all too short battle with brain cancer. The treatment was a lot and was really tough on Pete and his family. And if you'd like to support them, his wife Brenda, their kids in this difficult time as they've now lost their husband and their father, and we've lost a tremendous member of our community and a consummate colleague and professional. There's a GoFundMe page available. A lot of my colleagues have shared it on their various social medias, as have I. If you're an Instagram user, Instagram.com/ or just on Instagram, just search Hoffman.sports, and the link is up in my story. Also, if you're watching the show on YouTube, if you scroll to the top of the chat, we have a pinned comment with the link. It's also in the episode description on YouTube, and it's on the Team 980 social and 1067 The Fan socials as well. So if you can help Pete and his family out during this time after we lost Pete last night, just 55 years old, to brain cancer, that would be great. It'd be greatly appreciated, and we'd love for you to do that if you are willing and able. Without further ado, no easy transition, just hard left turn. Logan, me talking about Jaden Daniels and how he performed against the Lions. Hint, it was pretty darn good.
To take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What really stood out to you about how this pass game was structured and how Jaden was then able to just, I mean, it sounds crazy, but at this point, he was just him, the top 5 quarterback in the NFL that he is.
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, I think Cliff has done a great job throughout this season of knowing what Jaden's good at, and making sure you call that and making sure you disguise it enough so teams can't key on it. Like the first completion of Zach Ertz is spot. Like they've run that. How many times have we talked about spot? They've run it 5 million times, and it's been like the first play a lot of the games. So we're gonna put a little window dressing on it. We're going to motion empty. And all of a sudden, boom, easy completion to Zach Ertz. And brilliant, right? Because you got to get that guy settled in, right? And so the more you can get him settled in, the better. And then the other thing is, I think, understanding when to take shots this game. I thought he was very selective about that, with the big cross and with the dagger to Diami. We're not rushing the shot plays. And that's, if there's one criticism of Cliff this year, is that he's been at times, like New Orleans, for example, where he's like, we got to get a shot. We got to get a shot. We got to get a shot. This, I felt like he was very, and again, I think that's probably because they ran the ball so effectively. The quick game was so effective as well. He was much more selective about, okay, we're kind of right at the 50-yard line or at the minus 45-yard line. Let's take this shot and throw this dagger. And obviously Jaden Daniels does a great job making it right. Love some of the fourth down calls, like understanding that they're going to be in man coverage. So here's the man beater. We get Zach Ertz in a good spot on that underneath route, deliver the ball. And the just general composure of Jaden Daniels in those moments, like seeing the free runner, buying a little bit of time, getting the ball out to Terry on the crosser. Those plays are great. And so schematically, I liked what they did, right? I felt like if there's one criticism I'm going to levy against the total game plan, I felt like they came out at halftime and kind of got into some more tight stuff. They kind of brought it in, and it didn't work that well. And then they kind of said, let's spread it back out. And so understanding in-game when to adjust and what to do, I thought was really good. But overall, it was a very clean game plan, very straightforward game plan. It had answers versus multiple things. I love the fact that they're running, I think it's Austin's first catch where they're running that double chip look. They get a pressure. He's getting a little pressure. They're kind of rotating into this cover 2. There's a ton of space underneath. Just get the ball out. He does it later to Jamison Crowder also. There's an answer there. They can't cover this guy. Ball's out. Here we go. Easy yard after catch. And that to me is just a well-designed offense. The quarterback knows the answers. The answers are pretty straightforward. Boom, 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 easy peasy.
There's real clarity in the plan, and I think that you see that, and this is such a media member person thing to say, but we've heard Cliff say stuff in press conferences that comes true in the game. Like there's no BS about it. It's just like he has said against a team like the Lions. I'm pretty sure he said this literally last week. But certainly other teams that have been blitz happy. So maybe he said it against Tampa. He's like, I gotta make sure Jaden knows where the answers are against the blitz. It's like, very straightforward. You don't need to hide that. You don't need to not say that in a press conference. That's not a secret. These teams blitz a lot. So let's make sure he knows where the answers are against the blitz. And Cliff has done a fantastic job of that all year. And Jaden, I think, sees the blitz incredibly well. And then there's just kind of a spatial awareness with him where it's like, not only does he know where the answers are, but there's times he just runs away from the blitz where like he looks for the answer's not there. And he's like, well, the blitz is coming to my left and I'm me, so I can just run away from it. And he just runs to his right. And those aren't always big plays, but sometimes it's a scramble for 1 yard on a play that would otherwise be -7. And so that's good. That's a +8 on that play, even though it's a 1 yard gain. And the result is historically great against the blitz. You ready for these numbers, Logan?
I'm ready.
So Jaden this game, I beg your pardon, was a 0.59 EPA per dropback against the blitz. That is a top 20 game in the NFL in 2024-25. 10 of the other 20 performances, Logan, half of them, came against defensive coordinators that got fired by the end of the season.
Yeah. That's
wild, how good
man.
he was. Aaron Glenn is getting a head coaching job very likely or very possibly this week, and Jaden did it to that. He had a 0.76 EPA, or sorry, that was in total. He had a 0.76 EPA per drop back against the blitz. It's the 13th best game of the season by any quarterback, and Jaden has 6 of the 23 best.
That's the wildest one to me. That one. Like, they're all impressive. Like, all of them are impressive, but the fact he's got 6 of them versus the blitz this year is crazy to me. And like you said, there's something about him spatially, because again, when teams, it's interesting, like, because I thought they'd play a little bit more straight man. And again, like, to Aaron Glenn's defense, like, they're really banged up in the secondary. Their starting corner goes out on like the 3rd play of the game or whatever. Yeah. So they can't do all that. Maybe that was a shift. I don't know. But I do think that Jaden versus the blitz versus zone pressures specifically just seems to know what to do with the ball, like, at a really high level. And so when I think we said on the preview show, like, if I was Detroit, I'd play a lot of man and I'd blitz a lot. And so they did one of those things really well, but they brought a ton of zone pressures, and there's just so much space. And when you've got a guy like Jaden and we've got an offensive coordinator like Cliff, and they just are like, if you're going to do this, like, this is where we're going to put the back out for an easy, like, check down completion. Like, it was awesome. You know what I mean? Like, it just, and that's what he's good at. And he was good at it today. He's been good at it the whole season. And so again, like, maybe Glenn felt like he couldn't get a rush with 4. He couldn't cover in man-to-man in the back end. They are really shorthanded. There's no doubt about it. But this solution that they came to of bringing so much zone pressure versus this guy seems off to me, given the season and given just, again, even the first drive, like, the pressures are good. They're well-designed pressures. But, like, him getting the ball out to Jamison Crowder, him getting the ball out to Austin Eckler, like, obviously that's not going to be effective in this game if that's the pass, if that's the concept solution. Like, they're running concept that they normally run. It's like that double in, right? They do a great job matching that and covering that, but the back's dropped. There's no one on the back because of you've rushed so many people. There's not enough people in coverage. There's no solution. So a little surprised there wasn't maybe an adjustment, but again, credit to Cliff and Jaden Daniels for how effective they were.
Yeah, the problem is, like, the best way to play him is the way you don't want to exist as a defense. So Jaden in this game at just a 41% success rate against 4 or 5 man pressures when the coverage was man to man. The problem is they got 0 pressures with 4 man rushes. So you can't get pressure. So your choice is either let him sit back there forever and know that eventually your pipes are going to bust, or pressure and then live with him against pressure. And defense, like, Aaron Glenn is way too aggressive. He's way too itchy to do the former. But, like, most defensive coordinators are going to be that way. If I tell you the best way to play, especially a mobile quarterback that can kill you with his legs, is don't pressure him man to man. Just you have to be patient. That's a nightmare. because you're chasing receivers around. He's eventually going to get out. He's eventually going to run, or one of the receivers is going to pop free. It's just not a sustainable plan, even if it actually was far and away the best way to play him in this game and has kind of actually been the majority of the year.
Well, I think with that type of philosophy, you need to have a team that can accommodate it. And I look at Pittsburgh, and that's like exactly what they're built for. They want to play man, they want to play single high safety, and they want to rush with 4. And they do it more than anybody else in the NFL. They're really, really good at it. And I think if you guys think back to that game, like the ability they had to create pressure with 4, the tight windows they had in man-to-man coverage, like the Detroit Lions right now are not built to do that. Like there's no way they could have done that. Like, could you imagine man-to-man coverage for a bunch of snaps on Terry McLaurin in this game with whoever the backup corner was? Like that's a terrible proposition. But I think the thing that I would have looked at is you looked at, again, Todd Bowles, ton of zone pressure in the last matchup, ton of spy stuff. And when he's back there, Jaden Daniels is too mobile. He's too accurate. He's a great decision maker. He's got this great feel for space about when to run and like where to put the ball. And again, I just watched a couple third downs as we're talking here, and it's like he has that great out to Terry McLaurin versus his own pressure. He's got that great kind of like hitch from the slot to Jamison Crowder where they don't bring pressure, and he just is back there going through his read, manipulates.
It's a
player.
3rd and 10. And he just gets to sit back there and wait for Jamison to hook up, and he gets 12 yards. It's like, well, that was easy.
And I think you see kind of what has been ailing the Commanders defense in years past, where they can't get pressure with 4. They can't play straight man-to-man on the perimeter. There's no good answer then, right? Like man-to-man coverage is coming back into vogue in the NFL in a big way, probably over the last 2 years. Like if you can't do it, quarterbacks are too smart, offenses are too well designed, and you're going to have a hard time, right? And that's why I think that's why you're seeing all these sim pressures now too, where it's like we're actually bringing still just 4, but we're still playing zone and we've filled the coverage underneath. If you're bringing these true overload zone pressures, which were very popular probably 5 years ago, it's like there's just too many answers now, right? They're just too good at getting the ball out. And I think you see that in this game. Like he was kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. He chose to do, and the result was obviously very effective for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders.
And the anticipation that he throws with to be able to see stuff ahead of time and get the ball out quickly is no better illustrated than on the 38-yarder to De'Ami Brown. That throw is insane. The snap he has on it and how early he throws it. I knew that was a great play, obviously. I think we all knew it was a great play by both Jaden and De'Ami. There's the great picture that someone on the Commanders photography staff captured of De'Ami with the glove, the hand literally over his eyes. But you know that's a great throw by Jaden. But you watch the all-22 end zone angle, and you see how early he throws that thing. And it just doesn't make sense because you shouldn't throw that ball because the safety's in what should be good position. And he just trusts De'Ami to go win, and De'Ami does.
Well, you know what's crazy is, I went back and watched the Tampa Bay game from earlier in the year, and that's a throw that everyone's like, oh, he missed Terry on that throw. It's exactly the same coverage. It's exactly the same route concept. And, dude, like when you show him something, he's learning. He's learning. It's like the poise is incredible. His ability to take a look, learn from it, and be like, I know this coverage. I know how they play this coverage. I can put this ball over near the numbers, and De'Ami can make this play, or he's not going to make the play. But that's where the ball's got to go, and I can let it go when I've got to with a rusher coming down the pipe. Like that's big time. You know what I mean? And I think Cliff does a good job with the easy buttons, the screen to Terry. There's a screen to Austin. There's a couple bubbles early. There's probably 4 or 5 of those throughout the game, which just keep you on schedule, right? But his ability to do that big thing in that big moment it was just an incredible throw, incredible play, incredible catch by De'Ami, like incredible chemistry between the two of them. And like, obviously they've worked a lot together and that's improved over the course of the year, but yeah, that was just incredibly impressive.
One of the other really great throws in the game, and one of my favorite plays in the game, is the other deep ball to De'Ami, the 42-yarder where he's going the other way across, and it's big scissors, big cross, big X concept, whatever you want to call it. And I think the thing I appreciate about it is for so many years we've waited for De'Ami's speed to really show up. And I think that's a play where you just realize how fast the communication has to happen for Detroit, because you have two receivers. They're on tight-ish splits. So they again, that shrinks it down. If you have two guys on the outside that are going to run up and across each other somewhere down the field, if they have to come from super wide, it's going to take way too long. The NFL doesn't give you that amount of time in the pocket. So they narrow down the splits a little bit, and then they come up, and it's Terry on the left running to his right, and Diami on the right running to his left, and they have these big crossing routes. And Detroit tries to pass it off, and one of the backup corners misses the pass-off call from Terry and Arnold, and Diami's wide open. But you see, when you watch it, just how fast that happens, because the two guys running those routes are a 4.45 guy in Diami and a 4.3 whatever Terry ran guy in Terry. And that is a nightmare. And so Cliff's ability to find ways to leverage Diami's speed beyond just like, hey, man, we're going to send you deep. I think that was really, really good. And then Jaden's ability to anticipate and see like where the mistake is happening in real time and understand where to go with the football is pretty special as well.
Well, and also one of the things when you're on the sideline of the game, you get a feel for like how a concept's developing, and like you can kind of see it depending on where you're standing. And I will say that felt like it took forever for it to develop. And the offensive line in this game, I know Detroit's defensive line is banged up, but one of the things those 5 dudes and the backs, we'll put the backs in there too, and the tight ends when they're in there, have done an excellent job of this year is pass protect. Like they have just done an excellent job of that. And, like on some of these, 3rd and 5s, the one to Zach Ertz where Zach's got to work to win, like that pocket's pristine, right? There's a 3rd and 5 later that's completed on a crosser. I don't know if it's Diami, but like he's kind of back, waiting for the crosser to clear. Like that happens because the protection's so good. And so when you get a performance like this, because again, we've seen him like in the first Philly game, for example, when the protection's not there all the way, there's a ton of pressure. He can't see it. He can't let stuff develop. And it really hurts the offense. It hurts his ability to play the position. Those 5 dudes deserve a ton of credit because in this game and against Tampa Bay also, they've been absolutely outstanding. And I think Tampa Bay is a much better rushing group than this group, but still, you gotta take the test that's given, and they've done a great job just maximizing Jaden too, to their credit. And I think we have to talk about these explosive opportunities down the field. Those only happen if it's blocked up really, really well.
No doubt. And I think that the other factor in this game that we haven't mentioned yet in any of the shows, the one that I did late night, the one that we did on Sunday, or this one yet, is the tempo. And that probably plays a factor, and it's something that we should look at going into the Philly game because, like, down the stretch, man, Philly was struggling with that Rams tempo. And I know it's a late game situation, but, like, I think there are times that you can maybe get Philly a little bit because they don't sub a lot. And you can you get those guys tired and slow their pass rush that way? But for all the times that we've talked this year about the Commanders' no huddle and how it's not actually – they don't go fast typically. Mm-hmm. They quick snap Detroit like 3 or 4 times in this game where Detroit was not ready to go. And I think that's something that another tool in the back pocket. At the very least, Philly's got to be thinking about it. Philly's going to be rushed a little bit, being like, we can't let that happen to us. And with a guy like Jalen Carter who plays 100% of snaps because he's a freaking maniac, like, how do you slow that guy down? Can you gas him and just keep the pedal to the metal, especially when you're now going to be out Sam Cosmi in this game and for the rest of the playoffs, terrible torn ACL. By the way, before he went out in this game, there is one play. I got to go find it, and I'm going to put this up on social. He takes, I'm pretty sure it's Terry and Arnold, and just sends him for a ride. And I was like, oh, I'm going to miss this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to miss Sam Cosmi just destroying smaller people. And he
just sits him down. Yeah, just crushes it. And he's pulling in space, and it's kind of a tough block. And it's not like sometimes you see guys fit up and they're grinding them out, but it's literally just like, hey, son, and just pushes them down. And like, you just see how strong those dudes are on a down-to-down basis on some of those plays. Like, and again, just an incredible athlete, been an incredible part of this team, and obviously a devastating injury, but great job. Again, next man up, Trent Scott coming in and doing his thing. But it's a bummer. Sam Cosmi's not going to be here for the rest of the playoff push.
It is. Have you ever seen it's like an Instagram reel? It's like a mic'd up clip of Joe Hayden when he's with the Steelers being like, I lift weights. It's a very, very funny clip. I will have to send this to you. And everyone else listening can Google it. But it's kind of what happened to Terry and Arnold on this one. Terry and Arnold was like, I lift. And then he's gone. He's just a dead man being flung out the club. All right, that's the offense. Unless you got anything else before we get to the defense.
No, I think that's it.
Good job, offense.
Yeah,
crushed it.
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. With the short show yesterday, we didn't get a chance to do two major things. One, our pick 666, and two, we didn't get a chance to talk about any of the rest of the games from the NFL weekend. So we're going to do those both this hour, starting with a Tuesday edition of the Monday edition of the Pick 6 at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
So typically on Fridays, Anthony and I pick 6 players who we think are going to be the most impactful non-quarterbacks in the Commanders game. So I will end up having to do this all by myself on Friday because Anthony was at Flag Football Nationals, which, by the way, how did that go?
So I played 2 different styles. The primary style that I usually play is 9-man. We didn't do so well. We didn't advance to Championship Sunday. But the 8-man style I play, we advanced to the semifinal and lost both times. Like, you get 2 losses in 8-man, and we lost 2 games in the semifinal. So we didn't.
Semifinal's not bad. Not a champion, but not bad. Next year. But anyway, all by myself on Friday. I picked 6 players who I thought were going to be impactful. I actually went all 6 Commanders. Sometimes we will pick an opponent. And then we review it on Monday. But we didn't have a 6 o'clock hour on Monday because we had Georgetown Villanova basketball. And thus, here we are, starting with
number 1.
The first player I picked on Friday, Anthony, was Austin Ekeler. That was a good pick by your boy. The reason that I picked Austin Ekeler was because of the Commanders' use of pony personnel. Pony just means 2 halfbacks. And the Commanders actually used 2 different varieties of pony personnel in this game. They used 21 pony, where it's 2 running backs, 1 tight end. They also used 20 pony, where it's 2 running backs, 0 tight ends. And they used them both very effectively. The Commanders used pony at one of the highest rates in the league, and Eckler's a big part of that. And there's different ways that they do it where they can sometimes literally just have 2 backs in the backfield, and they did some of that stuff. They would split Ekeler out. They would use Ekeler in like a tight end almost alignment where he could be a chipper, and one of his big receptions actually comes when he chips a rusher, gets out. The receivers had run deeper down the field. I believe this play was out of 20, where they send other players vertical. If one of those guys pops, great, throw it. If not, check it down because all your zone players go chasing after those guys. And then you have a ton of space. And Jaden quickly gets the ball to Austin as soon as he's out in his route off the chip. And that's a big 20-plus yard gain. That was the 24-yarder. Obviously, late, he also has that big 35-yard run. All in all, 6 rushes, 47 yards, 4 catches, 41 yards for Ekeler. And just a huge, huge, huge impact on this offense. An offense that at times can struggle to find explosive plays. He gives you 2 of them. And he gives you some good solid gains in between. Also good in pass protection. And by the end of the day, Anthony, Pro Football Focus had him as their highest rated offensive player in the game. He scored a 90.8 per PFF in his 28 snaps. By the way, well, actually, no, never mind. I'll just save that till later. But yeah, Austin Ekeler, number 1. Good choice by me.
Nah, great choice, for sure. I think Austin, he sort of kind of showed spurts of what we saw early in the season. Like, prior to him missing all that time due to the concussion, it sort of kind of gave us, glimpses of, what we saw early in the season. The fact that he's so dynamic, not only in the run game, but also the passing game. And he had, huge chunks of yards in both. So I think this was a great choice, and we're going to need him again. When we play these Eagles, just being able to, establish the run with him and B-Rob and both of them be impactful is what we've been wanting for, the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we got that on Sunday.
For sure. They did so much cool stuff with formations. And I'm very, very curious to see what they can do against Philly. Detroit had some tells. Like some of the stuff that Washington ran really well was, especially in the run game, this is more B-Rob than Ekeler, but for both of them to an extent, was stuff that Buffalo had run very, very effectively. Same formations and they're good at finding those things. So one of the things I want to do before Take Command on Thursday when we do our preview show and before we get deeper into the previews on this show is I want to go back and watch some of the big plays that Philly has given up, especially the run game. Like, how do teams get them? And see if some of those are some of the things that Washington does well, and then can they do that on Sunday? Number 2, please.
Number 2.
Oh, I just closed the document, Anthony, which is, a professional radio host's favorite trick. Let me pull up back my notes. Oh, that's right. Number 2 was Percy Butler, who I selected because I thought that the Commanders would play big nickel quite a bit in this game. And sure enough, Percy Butler, also they played a lot of dime in this game, which we'll get to in a second. But big nickel, when they have 3 safeties and 2 corners, dime, 3 safeties, 3 corners, ultimately 6 defensive backs on the field. The 27 snaps that Percy Butler played in this game were his 5th highest of the season. He played a season-high 56 against Dallas because Quan Martin was out. He played 49 against Baltimore, 34 against Pittsburgh, 29 against Cincinnati, and then 27 this weekend against Detroit. And he didn't play great. He played like Percy Butler. But I think you saw the reason why I selected him. He's out there against Sam Laporta on that sick. He actually didn't play that one that badly. Sam Laporta made one of the sickest catches that you'll ever see, that one-handed catch for the touchdown. He's also out there on the reverse. He gets caught. It was really Quan is the one that kind of gets caught in a really bad spot. Percy's the backside safety on that, and what it looks like the front side of the run before the reverse gets flipped around. So it would have been great if he could have chased that down, but Quan's the safety on that side who kind of gets caught chasing the run because, hey, got to be strong, got to pursue the run, got to be there in my gap. Oh, no, it's a reverse going the other way. Like, that's just a tough break. That's a well-designed play, well executed by Detroit. But overall, you see that. And then the other thing that I think is interesting, why he played so many snaps in part, is they go dime in 2-minute situations. And Detroit, from 7.5 minutes in the fourth quarter to the end of the game, was in no huddle or was throwing incompletions. And the only reason they were huddling is because the clock was stopped. So Washington's ability to get Detroit out of their comfort zone in this game offensively, even though they scored 31, they did turn it over 5 times. And there's a bunch of key moments where Detroit wasn't as sharp as they usually are. And Percy was on the field for some of those. But I think you saw and we're going to talk about it in a second with Zach Ertz, the way that Washington consistently adjusted and kind of made sure they had the best option on the field defensively by Joe Witt versus the way that Detroit handled it, which is very different. And I think that led to some of the different results.
Do you like Percy more in the box or the post?
I don't have a strong lean either way.
Yeah,
I feel like I would like him. I like the idea of him in the post is a really fast guy. I like, but I don't know that his reaction times let him play with the speed that he has. In some ways, I like him more in the box where it's just like see ball, hit ball.
Yeah, I agree.
Where Quan seems to read the field a little bit better. All right, number 3.
Number 3.
Zach Ertz. What a game for Zach Ertz, including a 4th down conversion, including a touchdown. Also including the onside kick recovery at the end. But the reason I picked him was kind of the inverse of what I just talked about with Percy Butler. How was Detroit going to match Zach Ertz? And the answer was Detroit matched everything the same. I charted the entire personnel in the first half. Anthony, Detroit played 0 snaps outside of the 5-yard line in anything other than nickel. It was nickel, and the Commanders threw every personnel grouping you could think of at Detroit. 20, 21, 11, 12, 10, 1, 0 running backs, 1 tight end, 0 tight ends, 1 running back. Like they did everything. 4 wide receivers here, 3 wide receivers here, 2 receivers. Detroit's just like, we're playing nickel. These are our best dudes, especially after Amik Robertson got hurt. Like, these are our best dudes. They're going to play. And what it did was it allowed at times, like, because Zach can play essentially wide receiver and basically does essentially play wide receiver. It's like, okay, well, we're going to have a bunch and we're going to pull it all the way out towards the numbers. And now we have a linebacker who's man-to-man on Zach Ertz. That's like, well, I have a run responsibility in the box because I'm like the 6th player in the box. not even the 7th, the 6th. But my guy that I got to cover in man-to-man's way out there. And so he's kind of like splitting the difference. And we saw like a different version of that on the Brian Branch blitz into the Terry screen that went for the touchdown. And Zach was a huge weapon for some of that stuff. The way they formation some things and his versatility, the touchdown he gets, he starts inside but then motions outside right before the snap and then runs what I would call like a Texas route, kind of an angle route, and gets back inside and just big bodies his defender. He's open. Jaden hits him for the touchdown. And so just time and time again, the way they're able to use Zach, formation it, motion it, to get him in advantageous situations and then let him use the dark arts of route running to do his thing. Really great job by Cliff. Really great job by Zach. Really great job by Jaden. And that leads to Ertz having a big day in all the ways that you would think he'd have a big day, which is kind of a bad thing for Detroit, which is probably why they lost.
Yeah, the dude, Zach Ertz, man, he, like, talk about a security blanket. Anytime we need a play, that is who Jaden's going to. The 3rd and goal, he goes to him. We get the touchdown. The 4th and, I guess it was 4th and 3 from like the 5. He ends up going to Ertz. I will say, him throwing the ball to Ertz in the flat on, what was it, a 3rd and 2 or something like that? I was a little concerned just because Ertz doesn't get yards after the catch. And
no, they needed that to be a lot more open. And Detroit played that one well, but you're not going to win them all. But they won. But wasn't that right before the 4th and 3?
Yeah, it was.
And they did that twice, right? They tried to go to Terry on a 3rd down in the red zone.
And then they came right back.
And then they came back to him on 4th down.
Yep.
And Jaden Jaden had like 2 really bad misses in this game, and he wound up like avenging both of them because he had a miss in the flat on the touchdown to John Bates, and then he hits Bates on the 20-yarder later.
Yep.
And then the play right before Terry on the 4th down is this really beautiful like pick play, basically, where Terry's got a wide open slant. It's a walk-in probably. They certainly get the conversion, and Jaden just flat out misses it. Like uncharacteristic rush throw, bad ball. And then he comes back and dots him on 4th down and celebrate. Scary Terry. Hoorah. We got 3 more players to talk about, including a wide receiver not named Terry McLaurin, who had a big day. Hint, hint. But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, presented by Wawa. Chicken how you want it at Wawa with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, too, if you'd like, at the Team 980. Miss any part of the show, check out the Hoffman Show podcast, wherever it is that you get yours. We're rolling through our Pick 6 at 6, where on Friday we picked 6 players that we thought would be hugely impactful in the Commanders-Lions game. Normally we review them on Mondays, but our show was short yesterday. So we're rolling through on a Tuesday. Anthony, number 4, please.
Number 4,
I picked Daron Payne, which admittedly was probably my least interesting pick of the 6 players that I picked on Friday, because I should have picked John Allen. John Allen was awesome in this game. His best game, I don't know, Anthony, in 2 years?
Johns?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play a ton this year. Wasn't very good very often last year. There's moments he had last year for sure, but, man, this was vintage, oh, yeah, that's why that guy got paid all that money, John Allen. His ability to hold at the point of attack, his ability to penetrate and make plays. I mean, he should have had even more impact in this game. The Laporta one-handed touchdown, people forget that is a ridiculous play by Jared Goff. He is doing the Pat Mahomes fall down and throw it bit. You don't know who's tackling him?
John
Allen. Daron Payne in this game, he his PFF grade was pretty bad. Didn't record a tackle. But they did use that formation, some with him on the edge, and being able. I think he's so key this week because this formation kind of really came to life against Philly the second time around when they made that change and stopped Saquon. But they need to be able to play heavy-handed, and do that with light boxes. And Daron is a huge key to that. But John can do that stuff too. And so I do wonder, does Daron bounce it back, and does he have a big game against Philly, or does John play on the edge a little bit more, because they use John a little bit on the edge in this game? But I do think Daron finding his pass rush, being more impactful is going to be big for this team if they want to win 2 more games, which at this point, that's all that's left to possibly win. Holy crap, they're in the NFC Championship game. Anything else on Daron?
Nah, nothing really to add.
Yeah, wasn't his best day at the office, and it wasn't all that interesting. All right, this guy had an interesting day.
Number 5,
Noah Igbenogany, who had a couple of targets at him, and that included one where I thought he actually played the coverage pretty well against Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it's a great throw by Goff and a great catch by St. Brown, and they get that, I guess it's like a slot fade. It's an interesting formation. It's kind of like, it's not quite a bunch where there's 3 receivers bunched together. It's kind of a 2-receiver stack, and then 1 receiver removed from the bunch, but still on a relatively tight split. And I think what that did, and going into painstaking detail here, because I thought it was really good design by Ben Johnson and by Detroit, is if you're in the bunch, you are typically hip to that stuff if you're a corner. Like if you're playing man-to-man and you're like, oh, we're in a bunch, I'm probably going to get a pick play here. Because he was separated off the bunch, it turns the alarm dials down just a little bit, and it makes it actually a little bit, as long as you execute it well, and Tim Patrick did it without drawing an offensive pass interference flag, then you can be pretty effective there. And so that was a really nice design by Detroit. It's a good execution by Goff, good execution by St. Brown. It's a tough catch. Noah could have definitely played it better. I'm not excusing him, but it's not one where I look at and I'm like, terrible job by Noah Igbenogany. Overall in the game, where is he? 47 on the coverage grade, 47 on the overall grade, because their PFF is going to be like, nope, you should have been more impactful in coverage. And I get it. He was targeted 8 times, gave up 5 receptions for 93 yards, including that 34-yard long. They credit him having given up 60 yards after the catch as well. So that's obviously not going to help your PFF grade. But the thing that I do think is good, and what is worth mentioning, and part of the reason I was curious to see curious to have him on the list, one was the St. Brown piece of it, but the other was how would he play against the run. He had a 79 run grade from PFF, and he's in the mix on a couple of those the runs, and his ability to at least mix it up, if not flat out make a tackle or fill or do whatever, but at least to bog down some of the outside runs to let backside pursuit or let the linebackers get back involved, give Bobby a little bit extra time to shed a block. Like, he was, as a guy who's right on the edge of the box, he did a good job. And that's been a huge, I think, boon for him this year to be a physical football player. And I thought he did a good job of that in this game, even if there's always going to be, I would say, something to be desired in coverage for Noah. And this week, hopefully a lighter week for him, because we know that Philly doesn't do anything but target their outside guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely showed up on tape in the tackling aspect of things. Jahmyr Gibbs isn't an easy tackle. Dave Montgomery isn't an easy tackle either. So just the fact, he's willing to get his nose dirty, and that's what Joe Witt, that's all he wants out of all his corners, to be honest. That's why Forbes didn't, last year, because
right.
He didn't want to do that necessarily. So.
By the way, it's why Dotson's not here either, because he didn't block, which is the offensive version of tackling. And now we'll see Noah and Jahan do battle this weekend. Last but not least,
number 6.
Oh, man, was De'Ami Brown not least. 6 catches, 98 yards. Arguably his best game as a pro. The catch he makes on that 32-yarder, 38-yarder, where his eyes are covered, like that's sick. He's got the 42-yarder on the big cross concept where he just flies on that big X with Terry McLaurin going the other way. Jaden's able to read it out. The toughness he shows as a runner, the physicality on what I would call like some big body routes. Like, can you run a comeback and get some separation and get back to the football and push a guy off without committing OPI at the top of the route? Like, he did that in this game. Just a little bit of everything from De'Ami Brown, as well as some good blocking in the game. Like, De'Ami Brown is turned into a really, really, really good football player. And that's great. What does that mean for his future? We were talking about this in a break earlier, Anthony. Like, I'm not re-signing De'Ami Brown to be like, oh, we've solved all of our number 2 receiver problems. I don't know that 3 games. Now, look, if he has 2 more, and this is just who he is, and they're seeing this every day in practice, then maybe that's a different conversation, and they can have that conversation with De'Ami Brown's agent. But I'm not like, oh, they got to bring De'Ami back and pay him a bunch of money to be the number 2. But if I'm going to draft a guy that I hope develops in my number 2, and I know that early on I'm going to not be able to trust that guy with a full complement of number 2 reps, hell yeah, I want to bring De'Ami Brown back. And I want to bring De'Ami back anyway if he'll come back, no matter pretty much what the situation. I just think if you're going to go sign like a T. Higgins, it becomes maybe less responsible because you want T out there for a super high number of snaps, but also T's got an injury history. So maybe you do want De'Ami Brown, even if you go sign a T. Higgins. So I think that's an interesting one to watch, but no doubt De'Ami Brown has made himself money. No doubt he has elevated who he is as a player, and no doubt it's helping them win football games. So hats off to De'Ami. I love talking to De'Ami when we had him on the show in the middle of the season, and just like hats off to that dude for putting in a ton of work, and now he's reaping the rewards.
Yeah, he's having a hell of a postseason. Him and Terry actually lead all receivers in receiving yards for the postseason. So the fact, he's stepping up in these moments, something he hasn't done in his entire career, I'll take it right now.
For sure.
These moments matter more. So
Jaden is the playoffs leading passer, and much of that yardage has gone in the direction of 2 and 17. Yep. All right, that is our Pick 6 at 6. Tomorrow's Pick 6 will be a traditional Wednesday Pick 6, so you'll hear from Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn. Also, because it's championship week, there's a couple other folks that are speaking at the podium, so you might have some extra voices in there as well as we give you the top headlines and sound bites of the day at 6 o'clock. For the first time all week, we get step away from the Commanders next and take a look at the other 3 games from the weekend around the NFL. Some huge, huge decisions that John Harbaugh makes that help end the Ravens season, and much more next on the Team 980. It's Hoffman Show wrapping up here. Final half hour on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Don't forget, late night tonight, the Clippers hosting the Wizards. So you got that here on the Team 980. Right now, though, we go around the NFL as the Commanders will be joined on championship weekend by the Eagles, Chiefs, and Bills. Haven't had a chance to talk about any of those games. So we'll just go in chronological order. The game that preceded Washington's win in Detroit was the Chiefs and Texans, and kind of what we expected in a lot of ways, Anthony. The Texans put up a nice fight, but at the end of the day, like, they all year could not protect C.J. Stroud. And it seemed like whenever the big moment was there, that Steve Spagnuolo was able to just dial up a blitz or dial up a matchup even. And they could get whatever they wanted in the pass rush. And so it was like 8 sacks or something like that Kansas City ultimately gets of Stroud.
Yep.
And it's just, I was listening to a podcast earlier that was like, the Lions died the way that they died, but at least they were trying to do something, right? Or they died the way that they lived, right? They had a trick play that went awry, and it's like, yeah, but also think of all the trick plays that got them there, right? It'd be like if they lost on a 4th down. It's like, well, you don't get here without doing that. And then you got to be who you are, and you got to do the things that have helped you win football games. The reason the Texans aren't better is because they can't pass protect, and they just never came up with a good plan all year. And so they also died the way they lived, but they were just holding on for dear life all season long, and they waste another good defensive performance outside of like 5 plays where they forget that Travis Kelce's who Pat Mahomes wants to throw to in the playoffs, and somehow 87's always wide open in the end zone.
Yeah, the defense definitely. I think they came to play, and that's how are you going to win games. You got to lean on your defense, but you also need your offense to go out there and make some plays. And sometimes, though, Craig, I will say to the offensive line's defense, CJ held onto the ball a little longer than he should have in a couple of those situations because he had to check down several times, like wide open. I'm just like, bro, you're feeling the pressure, get the ball out. And too many times he tried to, play hero ball. So
that's fair.
It's sort of kind of what we expected, though. Like we weren't impressed by the Texans' offense all year, and again, they had another pitiful outing, I guess.
I would expect a coaching change at offensive line coach to be coming for the Houston Texans. Yes. Let's say sooner rather than later.
Are you out on Slowick already?
I'm not necessarily out on Slowick. Okay. I think he needs to do some serious soul searching. But, like, we can't be like, this guy was awesome last year and his relationship with CJ is great and, like, all the good things. Mm-hmm. And then just be like, after 1 year, like, never mind, he actually sucks now. Like, He's a very, very young coach, and there's clearly a lot of good things there coming out of that Shanahan tree. And there's a lot of good principles that he's got and a lot of good things that he's done. But can he take a good, long, hard look. And it's up to D'Amico, too, to be like, all right, hey, as a defensive coach, here's what I see. Here's why I think that we struggled. And it's on the general manager to be like, some of this is personnel related. To all take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and be like, we have 2 more years of C.J. Stroud on a rookie contract. How do we maximize those 2 years? And protecting him and making sure we get him to his second contract and that he is thriving and he develops at the rate that we know he can. Like, that's mission 1 for the organization. And they addressed it last year by trying to trade for Stephon Diggs. And now they've got weapons they don't with Tank. Like, who knows when he's going to be back? Diggs was not good and then got hurt. And Schultz had a down year. And their offensive line was good. Other than that, how was your offense, Mrs. Lincoln? Like, not good. So, am I out on Slowick? No. Do I need to take a long, hard look in the mirror? Abso-freaking-lutely. All right, so that was the other Saturday game. Sunday started with the Eagles and the Rams, and it started with a green football field and a pretty cold day, and then the snow happened. And, man, the factor that the elements played in this game was enormous. And from Stafford's inability to move on an icy field for a guy that has trouble moving anyway at this stage of his career to Kyren Williams not holding on to the football, it mattered a lot. And it comes down very simply to a Rams team that probably was the better team. Like, if you green dot, red dot, or I guess if you want to go green dot for Eagles, blue dot for Rams, who won each play? There's probably more blue dots on the paper. But that's not how football works. It's how significant are the green dots. And between the 2 Saquon home runs and the turnovers, those are the plays that decide the game. And so you can be as good and clean as you want to, down in, down out. You can have as many 8-yard runs as you want to. Not as good as a 72. Not as good as a 64. Not as good as holding on to the ball in key situations. And that really genuinely was the difference in this football game.
Yeah, ball security is job security. I would not be surprised if the Rams moved off of Kyren Williams. Like, he is super talented. Like, we know how dynamic he is, but at the same token, this guy loses the ball entirely too much. And I want to say it sort of kind of cost them, even though they did have a chance at the end of the game. But Jalen Carter, that dude saved everybody in the Eagles
to continue baseball analogies, there are, by the way, Baseball Hall of Famers just announced Ichiro, Billy Wagner, amongst those who get in. I'll get the full list for you in trending. But they got the 2 best closers arguably in the sport. Saquon and his ability to just always bust off the big one late, although maybe he should have gone down this time and wasted more clock because, dang, the Rams definitely made that thing close at the end. But also Jalen Carter's ability in big spots. I mean, Aaron Donald was like that. Chris Jones is kind of like that. There's just TJ Watt has been like that. The best defensive players, pass rushers specifically, always seem to find a way in the big moment to unleash their best move. And Jalen does that ridiculously consistently. So, dear Commanders, please be up late. Don't let that dude close it out. Although, I guess if the Commanders are down late and Jaden's driving, then you feel pretty good about old number 5 / young number 5. Yeah. Last but not least, what a game. It lived up to the billing. Didn't look like it was going to, but Ravens and Bills. And, the elements play a little bit of a factor here as well. Lamar, that early fumble, if that's not a slick ball, you wonder if he's able to hold on to that. But also just kind of I think there's 2 things about this game for the Ravens that drive me nuts. And congrats to the Bills. They're deserving. They've been a great team all year. The way they've remade that team to, instead of Josh Allen just having it all on him, to say, how do we support this guy? And they go get James Cook. They invest in their offensive line. And they've built a really great offense where he didn't have to do a whole lot passing the ball, but they also use his running ability in the playoffs to enhance what they're doing. And they run all over Baltimore. And I will say, though, on the other side of it, on the Baltimore side, the thing that drives you nuts is this is how they lost the games all year. Silly stuff. Like, Mark Andrews, you've got a big gain. You're you. Get forward. Like, that angers me if I'm John Harbaugh. The fumble that Andrews had more than the drops. Drops happen. It sucks. He's one of the most reliable guys. That 2-point conversion is absolutely killer, obviously, because it's a chance to send it to overtime or at the very least get your defense back on the field with a shot, as opposed to essentially game over, barring an onside kick. So, like, the drops, yeah, that hurts. But the play before Lamar fumbled, Andrews had a drop. But to make the decision to say, I'm going to try to juke a guy on a snowy, icy field and get more yards when I could just safely dive forward and get more yards and take the first down, that's the one that drives me nuts. Like, you've got to live as ball is life. And that's where Baltimore really hurt themselves. And then the other thing that drove me nuts for Baltimore is they had that drive in the third quarter where Henry got going. And they ran the ball right down Buffalo's throat. And then they go for 2, and they pass it. Why? Just run it one more time with Derrick Henry. Do not make the things more complicated than it has to be. And if they get stopped, I can live with the guy who just got me 60 yards on one drive getting stopped. That one drove me nuts.
That drove me nuts as well. But also, Craig, what they did in the third quarter, they should have been doing in the first, the second.
Well, they tried. They tried.
Fourth.
Buffalo did a really nice job against the run, and then Baltimore made some changes. And it goes to show, like, if you wait till halftime to make adjustments, it's often too late. And they were able to find some stuff. They did a better job. But also, like, Lamar only had 6 carries in this game. That feels way too low for a playoff game. They were trying to. Buffalo played like really soft zone coverages and tried to just, hey, we're not going to pressure Lamar too much. We're not going to spook him into running. And he tried to throw, and like he had some success, but that success dies when you turn the football over. And that's kind of the story of the first half of that game is they have 2 turnovers. And when you only have like 4 possessions and half of them end in turnovers, like that's not going to end well for you as an offense.
Yeah, I forgot. I mean, you factor in the turnovers. That's sort of kind of why Derrick Henry only had 5-6 carries. But I'm just like,
right,
bro, he should have had way more carries. But at the same token,
you don't have the plays.
The ball in the air. Yeah,
you don't have the plays. Lamar throws the pick, which is a bad throw / miscommunication. And then Lamar has the fumble.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously did Andrews have the fumble in the first half too? Or was that a second half fumble?
No, that was the second half.
I was about to say, because I was like, they only had so many possessions. But like, they probably had 4 or 5 possessions in the first half.
Yeah, the fumble was fourth quarter, actually.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, there's not a lot of opportunities. So down goes Baltimore. If I'm Baltimore, though, I'm running everything back. I'm hoping Monken doesn't get a job. I'm bringing back Henry. Like we're good. We're just going to focus better next year. Like I would not change a thing. Legitimately would not change a thing. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we will wrap things up with real things real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Tomorrow on the show, Robert Mace from the Athletic Football Show is going to join us. Excited to chat with him, one of the smartest guys talking about the league. I think he's the best. I think their show is the best NFL podcast in the NFL podcast sphere. So we'll have Robert on the show to talk about what the Commanders have done, getting to the NFC Championship game, and all that. Anything else? I know. I guess we got a whole bunch of people at the podium tomorrow. They're doing a Jaden's actually even talking twice this week. Jaden's talking Wednesday and Friday. So we got a bunch of extra media stuff happening for the Commanders this week because of the stakes. You know, the media attention is so much higher. There's only 4 teams that anyone's talking about in terms of actually playing football games. Of course, you got the coaching news and things that we were paying attention to more last year as the games were going on in the background. But tomorrow, Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels, as usual. I think Terry is going to the podium. I think Bobby's going to the podium. There's a couple other guys that are going to the podium as well. So we will have plenty of sound for you tomorrow on the show. We'll have Maze. We'll see who else is out there in Ashburn and see if we can garner up a few guests on the horn for tomorrow's show. It's our, I guess not our last, but Anthony, we got to figure out what we're going to do for Competition Wednesday tomorrow. There's only 2 games, so I think we should probably pick both of them. And if we pick the same, we're going to have to go like a total. What are we going to do? We got to pick a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just gave you some homework. Gave you something to think about.
Well, also, Craig, we owe our ice bath.
Well, we still do, yeah. We could just walk outside for 30 seconds.
Man, it is that cold outside.
It's terrible outside. Yeah, no. As I've said, I have a plan for the ice baths. We're not punting that. We are going to do it. There is a place that has ice baths that is opening right underneath our building. So when that opens, I figure we just go. That's my plan. And we don't have to coordinate anything. We just go before work.
Man, it's going to be cold.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be as cold outside. And if it is, maybe there's a back door that we can enter, not have to walk back outside after.
Is there like a heated room or something?
Well, they do like saunas too. So
okay,
contrast therapy.
Go
that'd be the best show I'll ever do. I'll be so clear eyed. I'll just be like firing on 1,000. It'd be great. Other than that, we got Iron Eagle on Friday. Again, remember the game this weekend, the NFC Championship game, is on Westwood 1, and we have it here on the Team 980. Ian, Kurt Warner, Ross Tucker on the call. Ian's going to join us on Friday. We got some other stuff in the works as well. Pretty pumped to chat with some other guests once we have those locked in. We'll let you know when they're going to be joining the show. All right. Housekeeping. Unfortunately, again, if you missed this news, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but a sad day for us here at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan. As late last night, we lost our colleague, Pete Medhurst. He'd been battling brain cancer, and unfortunately, he succumbed to that cancer despite a valiant fight. Just 55 years old, and cancer is the worst. It's just horrible. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're rich, poor, white, black, anything. Just cancer is a horrendous, ravaging disease, and unfortunately, it got Pete. And we miss our friend. We miss our colleague. I opened the show talking about my memory of Pete. So if you want to listen to that, you're obviously more than welcome to on the podcast or on YouTube or however you want to. But much, much, much more importantly, Pete's family it needs some help. And if you could help them with a financial donation, they have a GoFundMe page. It's up on my Instagram story. There's a link at hoffman.sports. We've also pinned it in the YouTube chat, and it's in the episode description here on the station and all the on-demand content. We'll make sure to include that link as well, podcast, etc. So if you have the means and the ability to help Pete out and Pete's family out, his wife Brenda and their kids, then we definitely recommend doing so. You can go to the GoFundMe page. There's also a link at theteam980.com. Anthony, how much time do we have left in the show, sir? Nothing?
We have 15 seconds.
All right, so that'll do it for the show today. Again, search Pete Medhurst GoFundMe that's another way you can find it. So if you could help Pete out, we'd really appreciate it. Have a good one, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow here on the Hoffman Show.